Coming up in today's newscast, the IDF launches the biggest attack on Iran yet. Business resumes as usual in northern Israel following missile attacks from Iran. And we'll reveal how 200,000 people from around the world have come together to give Israel a big birthday gift. The IDF has confirmed that last night's airstrikes have damaged or destroyed dozens of Iranian military sites throughout Syria. Though the dust is still settling, this is by far the largest Israeli assault on Iranian targets in the region. Israeli jets took to the sky after as many as 20 Iranian missiles were launched at IDF targets in northern Israel. And at this time, there are no casualties or injuries reported, and we believe the Iron Dome intercepted most of the warheads. The White House has just issued an official statement slamming Iran for its aggression and supporting Israel's right to defend itself. Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman confirmed Israel's counterattack personally. According to Lieberman, the IDF wiped out nearly all of Iran's military sites in Syria.
אנחנו כמובן פגענו בכל התשתיות, לא בכל, אבל כמעט בכל התשתיות האיראניות בסוריה. והם צריכים לזכור את היומרה הזאת, שאם אצלנו יהיה גשם, אז אצלם יהיה מבול. ואני מקווה שאנחנו סיימנו את הפרק הזה וכולם הבינו.
At the same time, however, army officials warn that Iran is still quite capable of launching further attacks. Sirens broke out across northern Israel last night, sending Israeli citizens to the bomb shelter moments before Iranian missiles left Syrian airspace. Russia was informed of Israel's counterattack before it was carried out, likely in an attempt to calm any further flare-ups between Moscow and its ally Syria. This is a culmination of weeks of tension along Israel's northern border, a situation thrown into further uncertainty following President Trump's decision to withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal. With the fate of that deal still very much up in the air, analysts worry that Trump, bolstered by Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, have now set an unavoidable trajectory to a new regional war. This is the outcome most Israelis are indeed bracing for. Well, joining us with more on these breaking developments in the north is former Deputy Chief of Staff and former National Security Advisor to two Prime Ministers, Major General Uzi Dayan and Brigadier General Ram Shmueli, the former head of the Israeli Air Force Intelligence and the chairman of Shomer HaChadash. Thank you both for joining us. All right, so first of all, Brigadier General, I understand you've been in close contact with defense officials over the past 24 hours. Just how serious is this situation, and what can you tell us that we don't already know?
I think this was the largest attack of Israeli defense forces against targets, Iranian targets in Syria since 1974. Last night we sent actually two very clear messages. First of all, the message was turned to the Iranians that we are not going to tolerate any kind of building infrastructure, forward projector of Iranian forces against Israel in Syria. Nevertheless, while we are attacking by 30 airplanes, 70 different targets, Iranian targets, the Syrians make a wrong decision, and they decided to launch air defense missiles against our airplanes. This is something that we had to retaliate, and we destroyed all the 6 batteries, ground-to-air defense batteries that the Syrians launched from them against our airplanes. So we sent two clear messages. First of all, to the Iranian, that we are not going to tolerate that kind of military infrastructure. And secondly, to the Syrian, we don't have anything against the Syrian regime whatsoever. But if they are going to protect any kind of Iranian activities from their territory, we are going to attack them as well.
Well, Israeli officials, they've claimed that Iran's offensive capabilities as a result of these airstrikes have now been stunted for at least a few months. Is that the reality here? What is the threat that we are still facing from Iran?
Well, the ultimate threat of Iran is that Iran want to go nuclear.
Of course.
And everybody understands that if Iran get nuclear, all the problems of the Middle East will remain the same. Some of them will be even intensified. And in top of it, we'll have a mega problem, which is a nuclear Iran. Imagine yourself in such a situation like yesterday, that Iran has also nuclear capability. So
when it comes to the threat that the more immediate threat, what is Israel looking at right now? I mean, how likely is war?
well, the immediate threat is a threat on the Israelis who live in the Golan Heights. Actually, other Israelis, but Iran is pretty careful about it. First of all, they don't do it themselves. They send the Hezbollah as a proxy to do the job. If you ask, people ask themselves, is it going to be a war? I don't think so, because, but this is time to turn the screw on Iran.
What I will say is that this attack was relatively small compared to perhaps what it could have been. What are the Iranians really up to here? What was the point?
The point of the Iranians, they are trying to influence the region, both in Syria, Lebanon we know for the last 30 years, in Yemen, this is regions that we don't care much, but they are going to, they want to influence, and they influence even in the Gaza Strip. Everything is to undermine the state of Israel, which they don't recognize. I think that the Iranian people are much more like us. The Iranian people and the Israeli people can be together. We can do big things together. Nevertheless, the regime is very confront against Israel. So they tried to check our limits and red lines that we draw about Syria. Last night it was very clear forward. Nevertheless, I will advise ourselves to be very modest, to be very careful, and to be very ready for next night and maybe next night. Not that I agree with Uzi, I don't believe that we are heading to a full-scale war, but we have to be modest and very, very careful. This is what we do.
The Iranian goal, actually, as Ram said, is to have the hegemony in this region. And what they do, they export the revolution and together with terrorism. And nobody wants to deal with somebody who uses terrorism, have a nuclear umbrella behind it. So Israel now is, I said we have to turn the screw on the Iranians, because everybody understands that, first of all, they lie, they try to achieve operational nuclear capability. Right. See the missiles, for example, the ballistic missiles. Nobody built a ballistic missiles in order to put, I don't know, a Kinder egg surprise in the, it's nuclear. And what happened now is that they are on the defense, because the idea was to use the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as one way to get hegemony in this region, but nobody today is really put the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in his scale. And then they try to build a kind of let's say a mutzav chutz, a kind of a
attitude outside situation.
Forward project and
in Syria.
Yeah.
And then now we see that we don't want them. Everybody understands that we have to prevent Iran from achieving nuclear capability.
Well, what I would like
at the same time, not to kind of build a kind of a basis in Syria. And right now is Syria. Bibi met Putin, the Israeli Prime Minister.
Which is what I want to get to, but we're running low on time, so I do want to get to my next question here, which is kind of the status of the Iranian nuclear deal and what's happening here. Was it a wise move for U.S. President Donald Trump to withdraw America from this deal? We know that Netanyahu is happy about it, but is it smart for the future of regional politics and security?
It's the whole envelope. Iranians are putting, as Uzi said, the ballistic missiles that are heading to have a warhead, nuclear warhead. They are influencing the region, and they are making a lot of terrorist activities in the region. They destabilize the region. So the President Trump is pretty smart to realize that these things cannot go forever. The money for these activities in the region comes from the releasing the sanctions. So he decided to put the sanction back. First of all, to change the nuclear deal. Secondly, to stop pumping billions of dollars from the donor countries like America and Europe and to make a new equation in the Middle East that the bad guys have to think over, to rethink about their activities like he have done in North Korea. With the North Korean, he said, this can't be go over, and maybe the results in North Korea can be good for the world, and maybe the limitations that Trump put for the Iranian, maybe it will help to change the equation.
The only good decision, you know why? Because enough is enough.
You know, we're going to have to obviously wait and see what happens here. Tensions are very high in Israel. We can say that at least. Thank you both for joining us.
I'm optimistic, but we have to be modest.
Yeah. All right. Well, despite rocket sirens that sent Israelis across northern Israel to bomb shelters in the middle of last night, it's business as usual this morning. The army has urged citizens in the Golan area to remain calm despite last night's explosive events. Schools this morning are open on time as usual, even though for many families it was a rather sleepless night. Israelis are certainly no stranger to war, but still the launch of some 20 Iranian missiles from Syria, followed by a massive IDF counterstrike, marks perhaps the biggest exchange of fire in Syrian airspace since the Yom Kippur War in 1973. Tensions have been boiling along this front for many months now, as Iran has increasingly found a foothold on Israel's doorstep. But that tension has clearly boiled over in the wake of President Trump's controversial decision to unilaterally withdraw America from the nuclear deal with Iran, something Prime Minister Netanyahu has lobbied for from the start. With no clear plan B on the table to prevent Iran from developing nukes, many say Netanyahu is actually pursuing a war with Tehran. The latest polls show a sizable surge of support for Netanyahu's Likud party following Trump's decision to nix the nuclear deal. If elections were held today, the Likud could see as many as 42 seats in the Knesset from its current 30. Despite the obvious threat of war as a result of Trump's decision, the majority of Israelis actually support the nixing of the JCPOA. Interestingly, Trump's decision is wildly unpopular in the United States, where 2/3 of Americans agree that withdrawing was a mistake. It remains to be seen if the deal can be saved or if a regional war is on the horizon regardless. Well, as many analysts expected, the impending outcome of U.S. President Donald Trump's withdrawal from Iran has likely sparked a regional arms race. Now it looks like Saudi Arabia is vowing to pursue nuclear capability if Iran is able to. And joining us with more is ILTV's Aaron Pors. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Natasha. And yeah, as you started to say, it's really not that surprising, to be perfectly honest. Saudi Arabia has long talked about how they would match Iran in kind in any military developments that they make. But what really should be kind of a wake-up call as to how serious Saudi Arabia is the fact that they reiterated that fact shortly after Trump pulled out of the JCPOA.
Yeah, well, Saudi Arabia and Iran have been at odds for quite some time. In fact, Saudi Arabia is pretty much the only only country in the Gulf Arab states besides Israel to support the collapse of the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal.
Right.
So, do you think that we have a race for nuclear arms coming?
An arms race? I mean, it was highly expected that an arms race could break out should the deal fail. So, I mean, it would be highly unlikely that they didn't see that coming, at least as a possibility. But that being said, as you just said, Saudi Arabia and Israel was one of the countries to support leaving the deal regardless, long before we actually left the deal. So that could point to a few different ulterior motives potentially. And for Israel, for example, the case might be that, as Netanyahu said, he would rather deal with Iran, nix a bad deal than keep a good one. Nix a bad deal than keep a bad deal. No deal over a bad deal. But he also said that he would rather deal with Iran on the cusp of a nuclear breakout now than in 10 years from now. For Iran, it might be that maybe they wanted to become a nuclear power and this gave them an excuse.
Well, what does it mean, if Iran stays in this deal, as they're saying? I mean, that's a plan here for the Iranians. Right. Would the Saudis drop the whole issue?
Theoretically, yeah, I suppose so. But, it's anyone's guess whether or not that will happen. Iran did already agree to continue abiding by the JCPOA should the European and other signatories to the deal continue to uphold their end of the bargain. But that is really difficult to do considering new United States pressures. They would have to rebuff that. So it doesn't seem likely.
All right, well, we will keep a close eye on the situation. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Natasha.
With the opening of the new U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem set for next week, Hamas is promising a bloody finale to the weeks-long March of Return protest. Hamas leaders have just delivered a chilling rally cry to hundreds of Gazan youth. They say that when the protests reach their climax next week on May 14th, their leaders will be ready to die for a decisive end to Israel's blockade of the Gaza Strip. ILTV's Brett Allen Smith is here. Now, Brett, the embassy opens in just a few days. How bad are these clashes going to get?
Well, I mean, this is the final hour. I mean, the entire idea behind the whole March of Return rally, right down to its scheduling, is to parallel that moment that the embassy opens its doors and is open for business. That's going to be a very painful moment for the Palestinians all over the world, because as much as Israelis, feel very validated by Trump's recognition of Jerusalem and, by moving the embassy, this is a big nail in the coffin to the dream of Palestinians that they've been fighting for, for quite some time now. And Hamas is providing the, let's for better lack of a word better say, the more aggressive outlet for that anger. And you can be sure that Hamas wants a big, maybe even bloody finale to those protests.
Well, as you touched upon, the opening of the embassy in general is hugely controversial. That's because most of the world's nations have widely held that the fate of Jerusalem should be left between Israel and the Palestinians to decide for themselves in peace talks. The city is obviously sacred to both parties for religious reasons.
Sure, and reflecting that controversy is the fact that, next week's ceremony is going to be a fairly one-sided showing. I mean, the rumor is that European diplomats are actually going to skip the foreign ministry's big event altogether as their own show of protest. Something like, I think 86 ambassadors were invited altogether, but I think only about 30 as of now have formally accepted the invitation. But even though this is going to be mostly Americans and Israelis present, even some of the American embassy team that's based full-time here in Tel Aviv is actually not so thrilled about the move. I'm not going to name any names, but the feeling is actually pretty mixed in the office here, I will say, because they expect that this maybe is just going to spark more bloodshed and unrest in the future.
Well, what about reports that say Hamas is actually seeking a long-term ceasefire deal with Israel?
Right, so those rumors are looking more and more concrete, actually. Nothing's going to stop Hamas from finishing this March of Return rally next week. An unnamed Western country is, though, apparently already brokering some kind of talks on both, the Hamas side and the Israeli side. But Israel is definitely not going to consider, much of anything, even big promises like Hamas is supposedly making, until these weekly clashes are over. And the fact that these talks are happening at all means that Hamas may really be running out of options here.
Either way, next week will be a major week for history,
Sure.
so let's hope it can pass without any further bloodshed.
Sure.
Thanks for the update, Brett.
Of course.
Well, it feels like every other day there's a shocking new archaeological discovery in the Holy Land. In the last few years, Israeli digs have given historians a treasure trove of new findings to rewrite history books. And now it looks like the Israeli government is investing big time in the hunt for our past. The Culture Ministry is dedicating a whopping $17 million just for excavations in Jerusalem's City of David. This is a major upgrade in funds that will now be used to uncover even more hidden secrets in the ancient city. For many years, archaeologists had been bound by red tape before they could fully investigate Jerusalem dig sites. This whopping figure, 60 million shekels, will undoubtedly propel our understanding of ancient Jerusalem by leaps and bounds. The Israeli Antiquities Authority, which oversees most of the country's excavation projects, will distribute the funds over the course of 2 years. This money is actually part of the government's larger $140 million budget for archaeology, and is designated specifically for digs in and around the City of David National Park. These sites are primarily outside the actual walls of the old city between the City of David and Mount Zion. Certain sites will also be preserved as part of the National Park Service so that tourists will literally be able to travel through time and explore the findings for themselves. Who knows how many new revelations are just around the corner, or how many new mysteries we might soon discover. Well, eye specialists may have reason to worry because a new Israeli telephone app is promising to give users an eyeglasses prescription on the spot. It looks like the wait during your next trip to the optometrist may be a lot shorter than ever before. The company Glasses USA has developed a telephone scanning app that allows consumers to scan their eyeglasses so that they can get an immediate prescription for their next ones without having to visit the eye doctor. The prescription can then be used to buy eyeglasses online anywhere and not just at Glasses USA. The app may sound magical to people with glasses, but right now it only mainly works for simple prescriptions and not for multifocal lenses. Plus, it's only available for iOS devices. But have no worries, it certainly looks like Glasses USA is on its way to perfecting the app. The company raised $12.5 million in 2015. All right, next week, as the U.S. Embassy opens for business in Jerusalem, Israel will officially commemorate its 70th anniversary. Well, almost 200,000 people from all over the world have come together to give Israel a very special birthday gift. They've just signed 5,000 Israeli flags, which will soon be buried in a time capsule that will remain hidden away until the year 2048. These signatures come from every corner of the earth. Citizens, soldiers, kids, and grandparents alike undertook the massive operation, all orchestrated by one man, Alon Wald. Wald runs event and marketing for Jerusalem's Ammunition Hill historical site. Ammunition Hill was the battlefield of one of the fiercest and bloodiest wars fought in the Six-Day War back in 1967, a decisive turning point that ultimately saw the old city fall back into Jewish hands for the first time in 2 millennia. The thousands of signatures, spanning hundreds of languages from cities as far as Rome, Bucharest, Miami, Tokyo, and New Delhi, will be buried in a time capsule at Ammunition Hill. Even though they won't be seen again until Israel's 100th anniversary in 2048, there's plenty to see at Ammunition Hill in the meantime. You can actually find Israeli flags from the 1948 Independence War, the Yom Kippur War, and the Six-Day War, all in one place. But the event's organizer puts it best. Wald says that, quote, "In 2018, we're showing that our flag is not just about death and battlefields. It's about our nation's future. 200,000 blessings can't go wrong." Now, ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh is here with this week's Top 5.
Israel has been victorious 3 times so far in the Eurovision Song Contest, and this year we're expecting a 4th. But before we jump the gun, I'm here to give you guys the top 5 Israeli song submissions, including the 3 that won, and 2 of our all-time favorites. So let's get started. We can't start this list without putting the Israeli song submission for the 2018 Eurovision, Toy by Netta Barzilai. Her song has been #1 on absolutely everyone's list since the music video came out, and her performance at the semifinals this week blew us all away. Her song, talking about being a powerful, strong, and confident woman, comes at a perfect time, to say the least. I don't want to jinx anything because honestly, we're just so proud of you already. Second on our list may have not taken the prize, but it did become a staple in the Israeli music scene since it first came out. Golden Boy by the young Nadav Gej was the 2015 Israeli song for the Eurovision and was the first Israeli entry with lyrics entirely in English. The song finished in 9th place in the grand finale with 97 points, but either way, he's still our Golden Boy. Third on our list was the winner of the 1998 Eurovision, Dana International, with the song Diva. Now, while Orthodox Jews and other conservative groups were opposed to Dana representing Israel, Diva won the contest with 172 points. Diva also became a hit, reaching number 11 in the UK charts, as well as sweeping the charts of countries all over the world. Fourth on our list was the song that was performed here in the Holy Land in Jerusalem, winning the 1979 Eurovision, Hallelujah, by Gadi Atari and Milk and Honey. This was the first time Israel was hosting the Eurovision Song Contest, as well as the first time the contest would take place outside of Europe. And in an effort to remember and show respect to the song, Israeli Culture and Sports Ministry released an updated version to celebrate Israel's 70th birthday. Last on our list, but first to ever win in the contest, was the song Abani Bi by Ishal Cohen. The song, an up-tempo disco number, took the prize for Israel in Paris in 1978 and is best known to be one of the best entries in contest history, not just because of the tune, but also because of the performance itself. Let's hope we can add this year's entry to the list of wins, and that's all for today's Top 5. Back to you.
The Hebrew word of the day is brought to you by IDC Summer Ulpan, open to everyone.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Israel just received thousands of positive birthday wishes from all over the world, and that's why today's word is bakasha, meaning wish. Now, everyone has a bakasha, or a wish, which makes sense. You see, bakasha shares a root with levakesh, which means to ask, meaning that our bakashot, or wishes, can be big or small. We could have a bakasha for Israel to win the Eurovision contest, or for a chance to meet our heroes. And then again, a bakasha, or desire, could just be for self-improvement or help on a homework assignment. I wonder what Israel's 70th birthday bakasha will be. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be partly cloudy but warm, with a rise in temperatures to a low of about 67 or 19 degrees Celsius. Over the weekend, you can expect another sharp rise in temperatures and a chance for light rain. The high should be around 79 or 26 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.57 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Natasha Kirchak, and thanks for watching.